Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen, here with Amy Blackford and Louis D'Souza. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today, and we're happy to have the whole team back in the same place at the same time. We've been doing, I don't know, what was it? Musical chairs? I'm not sure exactly what we've been doing lately, but haven't had everybody here all at one time.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yes, I am sorry that I missed last week, but that migraine was not going to allow me to be present on the podcast.
Well, especially when you told me just before we did the show today, that was the first migraine.
I've never had.
You're not a migraine.
I've had serious headaches before, but
Yeah.
a migraine.
Now what a
I
migraine
understand
is.
what the difference is.
Yeah, now you know.
I couldn't even keep my eyes open.
Light
I was
sensitivity.
nauseous. It was hard to eat.
Yeah.
It was intense. I have a whole new appreciation because I have friends and family members that this is actually a chronic thing that they deal with.
Yeah.
And I've had pretty intense headaches before, but that's all it was. So that lasted for about 3 days. So it started on Monday and it just kind of kept progressing. It kind of started over the weekend. And then this week it's slowly tapered into just kind of like a low-key headache. And I was telling Louis that, now my eyes are kind of been watering and itchy. So I'm wondering if it's just like an allergy. So anyway, I'm happy to be back and feeling today actually is the first day that I feel like myself again. So it's really awesome to be back.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, we like that. Welcome back to being yourself again.
Yeah. Nothing like having something like that happen
Yeah.
to really make me appreciate how good I actually feel on the regular. So that's the best thing that I always get out of it and remind myself when it's over.
Amy, that
thing.
brings up something I wanted to touch a little bit on in this episode. Is something Carolyn May said. She said, we're mystics without monasteries.
I love it.
I like it.
So we're going through a lot of spiritual growth, but we can't exactly go to our boss and say, hey, I'm going through some spiritual stuff now. Can I take a week or two off, or a month or a year?
So true. It really is. And you know what's interesting is I definitely see a correlation between when I start layering a lot of different responsibilities and things that I'm negotiating, because I definitely am a multitasker, but the more layers of things that I add on, I am noticing it does disrupt my physical well-being. And so it's instead of me just saying, hey, this happened, I know it could be an allergy, but I always look for a deeper reason behind it. And I definitely think there's some correlation between my mental energy was just kind of getting tapped out. And so now what could I do to start alleviating some of this? And I think our bodies are always kind of talking to us when we're pushing it too hard. It goes from the podcast that we did right before this happened, Louis, when you weren't available, we were talking about the effects of just how our thoughts and how we're feeling really does affect our body and the things that we're going through. So using that kind of as not a red flag. I don't want to call it that because that sounds like it's an emergency, but it's a sign that there's something kind of going on that you need to be paying attention to.
But have you been noticing a lot of kind of spiritual experiences, out of body or visions or other things?
Yes.
That you see. So what I'm trying to say is this is spiritual growth we're going through, but we're not preparing our body for it. We're not preparing our minds for it. In Egypt, they used to put you on a very, very, very strict diet. They used to train you for years and all the rest of it. And they used to go put you in the pyramid and you went through your initiation and, you got tons of this very powerful energy flowing through you. But you had many levels of preparation going on in the background, where today we've got like these spiritual growths and we've got like zero preparation, and then our body starts going haywire and throwing its toys out of the bucket. And
I like that analogy or that metaphor.
And just it's good if we understand the signs and we understand the focus and all the rest of it, and we prepare ourselves a little bit more for these kind of journeys, because there are a lot of us out there that are mystics without monasteries. We're going through a lot of spiritual growth, etc., but we're not necessarily preparing ourselves that well, and we are suffering for it.
Yeah, when I first started going through my awakening, it's interesting that you say that. I was very focused on my diet. I did a lot of fasting. and cleanses, because basically as I was having out of body experiences and all of these things I was running, my frequency was very high. Mm-hmm. And in order for me to kind of keep up with it, I was having to really, I don't want to say kind of withdraw from my external reality. That sounds a little strange, but unless it was really important and needed my focus, I was much more focused on keeping my body so that putting it in a space that it could kind of process this download and new energy that I was feeling. So that is something I probably should start doing again. You know, I exercise, I eat right, I drink lots of water, but maybe there's more that I could be doing, is what I'm hearing you say, to kind of help facilitate this kind of evolution. It's kind of speeding Absolutely. Up. I definitely feel it's speeding up.
Especially when it's your spine. You know, if you've got any pain in your spine, etc., your spine is not strong and fluid enough to be able to handle that huge amount of energy that's starting to flow through that amazing conduit which we have in our spine.
Right.
Yeah, it's not a coincidence that when we're feeling pressure, we tend to hunch over, like we're carrying the world on our shoulders.
Absolutely. I know. I have to constantly remind myself to sit up straight, Amy.
Mm-hmm. But Louis, what would you recommend for preparation? I mean, we know what the Egyptians would do, but what would you do? What's your way of looking at how do you prep yourself for stuff that you're bringing into your own life?
So, you can look at it from different levels. You can look at it from the emotional level, you can look at it from the mental level, and you can look at it from the physical level. So let's start with the physical level. Over time, I've built in good practices, like Amy says, you know, I eat good, et cetera, et cetera. So what you're doing along the way is understanding the kind of food you're eating. So if you're eating cooked food, you're destroying about 80% of the prana. Okay. Don't know if we all understand that or work with that or so you've got a life force energy in a raw carrot.
Right.
Okay. But as soon as you take a raw carrot and you cook it, you destroy a lot of the basic energy of it, that raw energy, that vibration which it comes out of the ground with, which it's been picking up all these negative ions that it's tuned into the earth, etc. And so when you eat a raw carrot, you're now getting extra. I remember when the first time I went raw food for a week, I was blown away with how much energy I had. I mean,
yeah, me too. I did that as well.
Out of my skin. So a good balance would be to like increase your raw food up to about 100% in 5 days, and then bring it down to 50-50, 50 cooked, 50 raw.
Yes.
Okay, and
that's about what I eat in a day. I eat a lot of raw vegetables and fruits, and then my
over
proteins.
Time,
of course,
you can build this into your life. All right, so you now got a lot of raw food. You got a lot of raw prana, etc. Go for more walks, barefoot, touch the ground, dig in. Maybe do some gardening, etc. But literally touch the ground, get those negative ions, get in tune with the earth, because what you're looking for is alignment. And the only reason you suffer during your spiritual growth is you don't have enough harmony and balance going in there for the energies to flow. So they hit the blockage, and then they go poof, and then something gives.
Yeah.
And then it might be mental, emotional, psychological, physical, etc. So you'll have these different dimensions of suffering from the growth that goes on. So preparing for it, for specific growth phases, spiritual phases, would be very, very advisable in my mind. So finding alignment in your physical body, in your mental body. So from a mental perspective, I would always recommend fully understanding the Abraham Hicks teaching. If somebody really thinks I understand it, I'm happy to test you.
I can attest to that, everyone. I got quizzed and I didn't realize I was being interviewed to be a host on Mondays.
So, once you really understand it and you're implementing, focusing more on what you want, less on what you don't want. I mean, it sounds really simple, but you really need to get to the nitty-gritty of what it all means and how it all fits together, and where the emotional guidance scale fits in, And, when you focus on what you don't want, I was teasing my daughter in the park, yesterday. We were there, and I said to her, Isabel, you say you're struggling to teach my philosophy, and I don't like that word. I prefer to use the word mechanics. Well, we'll go into that later as well. My philosophy to your friends. And I say, why is that? Why do you think that is? And she said, I don't know. And I said to her that the reason is because you don't really know it very well. It's not yours. It's my philosophy.
Right.
You haven't owned it yet.
You
So
have
I
to make
said
it
to
your
her,
own.
one of the ways which you can explain it to them is this. Say to them, there's one thing I really want you to do. I want you to really get this. Okay, it's very simple. All right? I want you to not think of a pink elephant.
Always a challenge, yes.
Now that's all we can think about are pink elephants.
Exactly. And that's all my daughter said she can think about is pink elephants. I said, so what does that tell you? When you say no to something, you're saying yes to something you don't want. And that's a good way of explaining a law of attraction. So you get the physical aspect. There's loads of other things I haven't even touched on it. You can bring in water as well to the physical aspect. I have got a coil around my main pipe of my inflow of my water, which removes the calcium. From the calcium, I have a special filter, and on the filter I've got love and gratitude. On my water bottle I've got love and gratitude. I tend to only use the water that I've stored overnight. Okay, so it's been on love and gratitude the whole night, and then I put it into maybe a water bottle that's also got love and gratitude on it. And then I put my hands around it like this, and then I focus with alignment when I'm doing that. And I just focus on my alignment. So, there's many dimensions you can go to start cleaning out and clearing out the body and the mind. So mentally, you really is beneficial to understand the rules to the game of life. When you can play the game really well because you understand its rules, or the mechanics of it. I don't even like to use the word philosophy. I'd like to say that it's so basic that if you wanted to drive a car, what's involved? You have to know that you've got a steering wheel that turns you left and right. You have to have an accelerator, which makes you move forward. You've got a brake that makes you stop.
Ignition.
So you just need to know the basics of the rules to how to drive a car. And it's really important to know the basics to the rules of life. And of course, you're not taught that at school. You're not taught that
I
at
always
university.
say this should be the first thing that is taught in school. Really, I think it is the most essential and fundamental things for humans to learn. And it's so much easier to teach a young person because they take it in so much easier than when you're in your 30s, 40s, and you're trying to reprogram, the other way of thinking, which was very much just reactionary.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree completely. So all those enlightened people that are listening to this podcast, and other people around you, just share it and share it and share it, because in your teaching, you're really going to know your subject, you're going to own it. And once you've owned it, it really is transformational, hugely, hugely.
When you start taking care of your body as well, your thoughts do start flowing more clearly. It's almost, I don't want to say it's automatic, but it definitely facilitates that. So it's kind of like the building blocks, like what you're saying, the mechanics. But when someone's trying to clean up their thoughts, but they're not taking care of themselves, you're kind of doing it in reverse. You want to start with the basics.
You're completely correct. So let's say I'm depressed. Look at the body language. It just changes, doesn't it? I'm really confident I'm going to go out there and get that job. Look at the body language changes. Yeah. So as you work with yoga, for example, do you know what the word yoga means?
Doesn't it mean breath?
Nope.
No, I don't then.
I have no idea.
It means unity.
Oh, does it?
And
I didn't know that.
From an Abraham Hicks perspective, it means alignment.
Yeah, okay.
Makes perfect sense.
Absolutely. So yoga is all about alignment, and it's not a philosophy. It's not a religion. It's not a belief. It is simply knowing how to use the mechanics and you either use them or you don't use them. It's a really, really, really simple thing. And they've known this forever, you know. It's us Westerners that think we know everything with our doctors and chemistry and all the rest of it. You know, these guys have been on top of this for so long, and we're just starting to catch up to where they are. And I've always respected that hugely. I mean, I've always been, even from a young age, I've always known that the yogis, if you really want to understand the body and the mind, you need to go and get some information from these guys, because I understand.
Right.
They really get it. They've had it for a long time, and they've thought about it for a long time. I mean, not a long time. It's like centuries. It's like a long, 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 long time. It's like thousands of years. So, we're still playing catch up on this whole thing. We got all these self-development courses, etc. Most of them are stolen from the yogis in some shape.
Right.
They are. All of them. Yeah. So, I've always known from a young age that if you really wanted to get a greater understanding of the body and the mind and how to put it all in harmony, etc., go to the source of the information on this planet, because that's where it is.
Yes.
So the yogis, just to give you an example, and this is something that can also help you with your spiritual growth, is to understand this. Now, this is a newish concept to me, and I'm still learning more about the yogis and what they can teach. This is a very simple thing, but you usually breathe about 23 breaths a minute, approximately. And if you breathe, slow it down to, and it's not that difficult, by the way, to 9 breaths a minute, to 12 breaths a minute, you start being able to tune into the weather, to the atmospheric conditions on the planet, and you start being more sensitive. Some people are really sensitive. Their grandma sits in his rocking chair outside, and it's going to rain today, and it's blue sky. They just know.
Right.
And if you lower your breath rate to 12, then you start synchronizing with the atmospheric world, and you can start picking that up easier.
So
now, this
slower
is
and
that comes
deeper
from
breaths.
Yogis. Yeah.
So slower and deeper breathing, like we do in meditation.
Yeah.
I notice a complete shift in my energy when I consciously focus on slowing my breathing down, inhale and an exhale. Whereas, 23 compared to what you're saying is double that. And so it's almost got an anxious, quick energy to it, shallow breath.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you lower it down to 9, then you start being able to
feeling like you're going to pass out. No.
Actually,
sorry, I had to add that.
I do the 4, 7, 8, and that brings you down pretty much to 3 breaths a minute. So breathe in for 4, hold for 7, breathe out for 8.
Oh wow!
And that is not difficult. Most people can do that.
Okay.
So if you bring it down to from 12 to 9, you start being able to communicate with, and again, this is information given to me by yogis, and I'm going to put it to test. This is for me to play with. This is I'm not saying this is gospel or anything. This is just saying this is interesting information that nobody's ever told me before, that I'm ready. when somebody gives me little tidbits like this, I'm like all over them. So if you go down to 9, you now communicate with the animal kingdom, or I don't want to use animals. I want to use any insect, anything. Creepy crawly, anything. So it doesn't matter what it is. If you come down to 9, you start being able to take your vibrational interpreting machine and tune your receiver to that level of communication.
This is pretty fascinating, though, hearing that the breath and the control of that tunes you into different levels of our environment. The weather, the animals. I think that is super interesting.
The next one, which is 6, tunes you into the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And planet Earth has a lot of knowledge.
Yes.
I mean, I just learned a little bit about malachite and the fact that with its lines, it pulses out, as I've mentioned this one before, pulses out through the whole Earth, even goes into the stratosphere and bounces off and comes back again till it finds another piece of malachite, and it stores all the information. And it's got all the information from the beginning of the planet. So it has everything about planet Earth stored in it. And it once it's bounced off and it comes back into that stone, it stores all that information. So each malachite has all the information of the planet, and it's always collecting new data.
Have you ever heard the recording of the planet and what it actually sounds like, the frequency?
No, that would
It
be interesting.
sounds like, I want to say I found it on YouTube. It literally sounds like birds chirping. It's beautiful. What the planet sounds like. Go ahead and give that a YouTube, like a YouTube
Yeah,
or
I
Google
will.
it.
I will.
It was really fascinating when I stumbled upon that they've been able to record out in space the different frequencies of what planets sound like. And I want to say it was either Pluto or Jupiter had this really, maybe it was Saturn. One of them had this really strange, almost eerie sound to it. So all the planets have a different frequency and a different sound that they make. And Earth's was really beautiful. It sounded like birds chirping to me.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, which made sense.
Yeah.
So you're actually saying this planet is for the birds? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Of course.
The two-legged ones, yeah. They're all
The two-legged ones,
Somebody was
right.
telling me. And then, of course, if you go down to 3 breaths a minute, you are now connecting to source energy. And that's one of the reasons why I think that 4-7-8 breathing technique, which I keep on going on about and have done for the last 3 years. I've been on the podcast for 4 years. I brought it in now and again. It brings you close to that, very close to that. And, yeah, I can see why it has that kind of effect that it does for me. It really puts me in a really blissful state. But having this new information is very exciting for me. And I can
It's something
imagine
new
not so
for you
much
to
for
play
other
with and
people,
experiment.
But for
The fact-
me, it's really
The fact that you use the word philosophy versus mechanics, I want to go back to that for a moment.
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
it's interesting. You talked about what the origins of the word yogi, what yogi means. I wanted to ask you, did you know what philosophy means?
No, good. Yeah, shoot, I'd love to know.
The philo part means love. The sophy part means wisdom or study of. So it's
love of wisdom.
love of wisdom or the study of love, which is
Nice.
ironic considering when you look at the actual writings of most philosophers, especially Western philosophers, although I'd say Eastern philosophers too, over the last millennia or a few
You're not
millennia.
feeling the love, Walt.
You're not feeling the love. No, there's not a whole lot there, which is really odd when you think about it. So I fully grasp why you would say, you don't want to think about it in terms of philosophy. On the other
I think
hand,
because of the Western idea of what the word means is not what the original definition is.
Right.
you think?
Well, and it's also if we think about it, the engagement of the mind, when we pull too much into the mind, to me, I feel like there's a lot of viruses up there. I call it the chemical computers, the brain, and we're just downloading from birth. And even before then, all of these limiting beliefs and things that are passed down generationally. So I see my physical mind is the last place that I want to be getting my real information from. So that's why I would sometimes reference my higher self as my higher mind. It's that mind outside of me that knows better, that knows more,
Well,
that is not
somebody else
contaminated.
who's poo-pooing the mind, eh? Not only me.
I think it's how you use it. It's basically, I think the way that most people are trained to use the mind, we go right to our physical mind for all of our answers. And that is what keeps people going in circles and staying in the same limiting patterns and behaviors.
I'm going to
Whereas
throw a
when
monkey wrench into this.
Go
I'm going
ahead.
to throw a monkey wrench in because modern science is even saying this at this point, that the largest part of the mind, physiological, really most of the quote brain activity is happening in the heart, which kind of blurs the
Wow.
boundary a little bit because now
Wow.
we're thinking about it in terms of, well, everything's happening up in the head, but what if it isn't?
I've always seen the heart as like its own, I guess, has its own intelligence. So I almost see them as two separate things, but obviously they have to work together. But I've also heard like the Heart Math Institute, is that what they're called?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The heart is like 100 times, sends out the electromagnetic field is like 100 times more powerful than your brain, which I find fascinating. So I see what you're saying though, Walt. They do have to obviously make, the heart is basically the powerhouse for the brain to even probably function. It's the thing that supports the entire body.
But Louis is skeptical. So tell me about the
I was
skepticism.
just saying you'd need to make the distinction between brain and mind and maybe thought.
Because they are different.
The brain is a physical location.
Right. Yes.
Thought
the
could be
organ.
anywhere. There's not really a confine or limitation to the idea.
And then a thought is just a form that's being created through the mind. And the brain is like, to me, the engine or the mechanism.
Is it through, I don't really want to limit thought to come from anywhere, really. I don't know. Maybe. Does it come from the mind? Does it come from the heart? Where does it come from? I don't know.
I don't know.
It comes from consciousness, I believe.
Things that make you go,
Yeah.
No, I believe firmly that it comes from consciousness. Now, you're going to ask me, where does consciousness arise? Oh, now that's another question.
I don't think any of us, we could sit here and have fun playing with the mystery, but to me, that's the exciting part is there's so many possibilities.
So this is the interesting thing about yoga as well. What the yogis say is that their goal is to help you through the forest of the uncharted world of the
is that the technical term?
Consciousness, yes. Very technical. So of the higher mind, the source energy part of you, because they have a better idea of it. So the goal of a yogi is to shine a light a little bit on that non-physical aspect of you, and you can do what you want with it. That is how they would kind of define what a yogi's role is to shine a light on the non-physical.
Yes.
As I was bringing up my little conundrum about mind, consciousness, thought, brain, heart, all that kind of thing. One thought that kept going through my mind, or wherever it is, I'm not sure where it is at this point, that kept going through me. How about that? One thought that kept going through me was, and it was kind of brought up by what you guys were saying there, is that the real difference we're talking about is whether or not we're talking about thinking something kind of abstractly, or are we thinking about something while also kind of living it, feeling it, experiencing it? I think there's a difference.
Right.
I think of abstraction as sort of like, well, to be honest, I think of Sherlock Holmes's mind palace, where he has everything all carefully organized into his little boxes and everything, so he can go search whatever piece of information, arcane information that he filed away 25 years ago, and he can just pull it right out of his mind. And that it's a neat structure, but that's not really thinking, in my view. In my view, thinking, real thinking, is where your heart or your feeling or your imagination, or however you want to characterize it, is involved in the process. In other words, it's not just abstract thought. It's thought grounded in consciousness, I guess is the best way I can think of to describe it.
There's a distinction I wanted to make, is thought based on retrieval of previous information and original or more new thought.
Yes. Memory.
Which, by the way, that's the phrase they use to describe law of attraction. That's the second topic. I'm just mentioning that.
What is?
There's memory, but I've also found, have you also found memory is very interesting because it can change over time. I don't know what that is. That's another mystery to me, is my recollection of things as time goes on, depending on the space that I'm in. When I'm telling that story, the memory is almost like this malleable thing. It's not like a set thing. I don't know if it's because I'm shooting into parallel versions of things that could have happened in that experience and different layers of it. I don't really know, but it's another thing that fascinates me, is this idea that even though I'm here right now talking to you all, there's all these other parallel versions of this scenario or of my life on this kind of spectrum. And it's something that I really do enjoy playing with. So when I think of even the law of attraction, I don't think of it as I'm just attracting things out of nowhere. I think of I'm actually shifting parallel versions of myself to meet up with these different things that are already there. They already exist. I'm already experiencing them, whether it's, more money or the car or whatever it is. So it's not like this version of myself suddenly attracts something from the great beyond, whatever you want to call it. But it's that I actually raise my frequency up to meet that version of myself that has already acquired that thing. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it's similar to the Neville Goddard concept, actually.
Yeah.
A number of teachers have that idea, the idea that all creation is already complete, and that anything that we're doing to attract it, using our terminology, or to use Neville Goddard's terminology, to assume it, to the law of assumption is where you bring it to yourself through assuming it. No matter how they look at it, they're all basically saying you're just bringing to you something that was already there. It was already created, because everything's already been created.
Which I find really to be hard.
Well, no, I find it to be a challenging idea, and I
don't think that.
I think it's limited.
I don't think everything
actually.
That's always been created is. I think it's constantly being created.
Well, exactly. I think what we're dealing with here is a limitation of language.
Yes.
Because we here in human form, and I've actually touched on this before on the show, are dealing with language that is time-based. In fact, every single concept we have is laced with time. We don't have any concepts that truly are timeless. We like to think that we do, but
we always think of time in this
there's always
format.
some sort of context in there. And I think that's what these teachers, including Neville, were doing. They were basically trying to express an infinite concept within the constraints of time, but time's an illusion.
Yes.
So I think you could just as equally say all things are yet to be created. It would be equally true. It'd be the same. It's saying the same thing, just using a different aspect of the limitation of time, or the way you were saying it, and it's the way I tend to think of it too. Everything is simultaneously creating at the moment.
Yes.
And all of them are equally inaccurate, I guess is probably the better thing to say. They are equally inaccurate because we're dealing with time-based language.
Yeah. I like that perspective of the limitation of language and trying to communicate some of this stuff.
I mean, when Abraham talks about how they communicate and how it's so much easier and cleaner than our human language, it's because they're communicating vibrationally, whatever that means. I'm not quite sure what that means, but it means it's very clear to them. They have no doubt about it.
Have either of you ever gone and seen Abraham live?
I have once.
Yeah, me too. I went once, and it was a really awesome experience.
I booked it, but it got canceled because of COVID.
Oh, really? I really want to do. I don't know if Esther still signs up to do this, but she used to do these cruises. I always thought that would be a lot of fun too.
all of us should go on a cruise together. That would be
I was just
that would be fun.
Say,
yeah.
Let's do an LOA today.
That would be fun. That would be interesting. Yeah. Well, once this whole COVID thing settles down. Yeah, we can think about that.
I'm really feeling like this summer we're going to see a big shift. I feel it coming, and I'm very excited about it. So I'm really hoping to see that happen for everyone.
I've been saying it's going to happen starting around April 1st. I've been saying that for a while.
Nice. I like that even better.
I still think that. I mean, I don't think it's going to be going away entirely, but I think we're going to feel, as a culture, we're going to feel very different about it in April. Yeah. That's the trend.
It's hard to believe it's already been a year.
Yeah.
Since this all started.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to our previous discussion about everything's already created. So if you listen to what Abram is saying, is Source's design is endless expansion.
Right.
Now, endless expansion implies to me that not everything's always is always created, and it makes a lot of sense to me. You know, I was thinking of the whole concept. You know, a lot of people are talking about love and peace. Let's just talk about peace for a moment as one of the greatest ideals that we should strive for on this planet. Now, to me, that's complete utter nonsense.
Why did I think you were going to say that?
Gotta have the contrast.
I guess so.
And it's very logical, because if you've always got peace, how are you going to know it's peace?
You're not. Just like if you're always healthy and you never experience something like what I experienced with the migraine. I didn't even realize how good I feel most of the time until that happened. It was a new level of appreciation that I gained from it. And so it makes those experiences worth it. And that is across the board, is with everything. So yes, to hope for this kind of idealized, it's going to be like this forever and we reach just this. you kind of know the point is to keep kind of surpassing, but you have to, in order to put a new thought out or a new desire for expansion, there's got to be that contrast that you experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, if you take the analogy of locking yourself in a box, a small box, and then somebody came along and gave you a slightly bigger one, you're going to think, wow, this is great. Oh, I can stretch, I can do this. And in no time, you're going to say, well, I think I want something bigger. And you get a bigger box and it's like, oh, this is great. And so what you kind of come to the understanding is that humans always want that endless expansion. If you're wealthy, yeah, you want something more.
Mm.
Okay, it might not be more wealth, but you want something more.
I mean, when you quit wanting things and you just cap off, that would kind of get a little boring.
You're not expanding anymore, are you? Then
right.
You might as well go into non-physical again,
Which you do.
Which you do, yeah.
Yes.
I've really heard stories about whether it's somebody becoming famous or acquiring a lot of money, that a deep depression will follow that, especially if it's acquired very quickly in life, because there's that feeling of, well, now what? I've already capped off at everything that I thought that I wanted. And instead of it creating a sense of elation, like a lot of people think it's going to, once I get here, I'm going to be so happy. If you keep thinking that way, you're never actually going to be happy, because when you get to that next goal or, that top of that next mountain that you said you wanted to climb, you've got to set another goal or what? I mean, you're on a constant adventure, so you might as well enjoy the whole thing. Yes, or you're always going to feel that sense of it's not enough or lack.
Let me toss another idea out for you guys, because you brought up the idea of peace, Louis, and that it really isn't all that desirable the way you described it. How about peace of mind? Because I distinguish between the two. I don't think that they are necessarily the same thing. Peace is an external concept. Peace of mind is an internal concept. And now I will say, if you have peace of mind, you're going to also experience peace. One's going to go with the other, but that doesn't mean that all of the world is going to be at peace. It just
right.
means you're going to experience peace. So that's the idea I'm putting out. What do you think of the idea of wanting peace of mind?
Can I answer that with a joke?
Sure. I'm sure you can. I have no doubt that you can.
I'm not quite sure it answers it, but we will elaborate afterwards. So I want peace, and only peace, but it must be the biggest piece.
That's cute. Let's have fun with homophones. All right.
So, even peace of mind, how do you know you're going to have peace of mind if you've always got peace of mind? You still need the contrast. Now, I'm going to tell you a story I heard recently that really depicts this very clearly. You've got this king, and he's sitting on his throne there, and they're all having a debate and the king puts out, what do you think is the most important thing in the world? And somebody came up with peace. Somebody said, oh, to serve you, my king. And somebody, came up with all different kinds of things. And king says, hey, Richard, why are you so quiet in the corner there? So what do you think? He said, it's to have a shit. And the guy says, what? He just had his ego boost to all these people telling him this, that, and the other. And now this guy's being so rude and saying it's to have a shit. He said, okay, give me a week and I'll prove it to you. So he said, okay. The king said, I'll give you a week. So he said, let's go on a little safari. So they all go out in the bush, and he gets all the women and children to come with, and there's a whole group of people, and this guy makes sure that the king gets the best food, and everybody's sitting there eating all this gorgeous food. And, the king is starting to get to the stage where he really needs a shit. And the guy's saying, where shall I put the lavatory? Where shall I put the long drop? Where shall I put it? Where shall I put it? And he keeps on going on like this, wandering around looking for a place. And he's got all these kids there and all the women. And the king's like, oh, conscious, and everybody's around. So he's sitting there and he's really, really desperate. And just before he's about to explode, the guy gets this thing dug, and the king has this incredibly good shit. And I love the analogies. He says to the king, don't you think it's one of the most beautiful things in the world? Having a good shit. So what he's trying to point out there is the contrast that is necessary in life for you to really appreciate it.
I'll counter that by making a different suggestion, and it won't involve anything like defecation at all.
Poopy story time with Louis DeSouza, everyone.
And it's actually something that if Abraham were to say to me something along the lines of what we've been talking about here, it would be the thing I would say to them, which is there an imminent concern that we're going to lose contrast? I mean, is there a contrast? Is there a contrast issue going on that I'm not aware of? Like it's all going to go away?
I don't think we have any problem on planet Earth with contrast.
Sorry, I'm not clear on what you're saying.
What I'm saying is there a risk that we're about to lose contrast, or that contrast is going to go away at some point?
Won't exist anymore because the physical universe is gone.
Yeah.
So is there a possibility of the annihilation of the physical universe?
Is that what we're saying? Because if that risk isn't there, then I think that this is all a bunch of needless wheel spinning.
Well, as there's no time, what are you worried about?
I'm not. I'm asking you what you're worried about. That's my point. There's nothing to worry. There's no big deal going on here, folks. Peace of mind works great. I don't have to worry about the contrast going away. It's going to be there.
Well,
it's not like there's a big risk of it disappearing.
Peace of mind is definitely a choice. And when I don't have it, I know that it's because I'm causing it within myself.
Yeah.
So, any time that I don't feel it, like that peace of mind where anything could be happening outside of me, it's how I'm choosing to interpret it. It's how I'm choosing to view it. And at any given moment, I can choose to look at it differently. So it's knowing when I kind of go off the rails, I already accept that that's because I don't want to say that I want to, but that's the choice that I'm making in that moment.
What I do promise is that if there is an imminent risk of contrast going away, you'll be the first to know about it here on LOA Today, because we will be announcing it to the world. But until then, I think you're safe.
Oh, that was good.
Taking a break here, I just wanted to include a couple notes. First of all, those who were listening to the previous podcast, you heard that Monique might be dropping by. She actually had a conflict, so she couldn't drop by today. But Monique Scott, Louis, the Wednesday show with me, she is probably going to drop by next Monday because, as I was describing with Amy before the show, she had an astral projection, and it was unexpected, and it scared the daylights out of her. And it came up in conversation last week. I said, well, if you really want to learn more about that, the guys you want to talk to are Louis and Amy on Mondays.
That's what I said, Louis. I was like, oh.
She got all excited about that, too.
Cool.
So
Monique, come let's chat.
We may get a visit from Monique next week. So I'll just give you guys a little heads up about that. Also, we have a change.
Monique, I can just say I appreciate that fear.
Yes, it is natural. I wanted to say that as well. It is natural to have that response to it, especially if you're not expecting it.
It's a small death.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the word small was not part of the sentence, but other than that, yes.
No, first time you have the small death, it's a big one.
The other thing that I noted the end of this past week, Linda Armstrong has decided she's going to move on to other adventures. We're going to have a new co-host joining me on Fridays. Rita Giganti still may come back. She's not quite sure if and when she's going to come back, but she's still working on that. Basically, it's going to be dependent upon what her angels and spirit guides suggest to her after she's taken a bit of a break to deal with some family issues. But she didn't rule out coming back once she knew that Linda was leaving, which was good. But the person who's going to be filling in is somebody that Dan Mangana introduced me to, and she was on the podcast last fall. Her name is Debbie Garcia. And, you guys are going to like Debbie when you hear what she has to say, because she comes from an extremely high contrast experience situation and has manifested all kinds of amazing stuff in her life as a result.
Fantastic.
She was actually part of the David Strickle boot camp, TIDA boot camp, and one of the early graduates from that, and has had a whole lot of interesting stuff to talk about. She does her own podcast called Spirituality Gone Wild. And we're actually going to be, she and I are going to be talking behind the scenes about ways to tie her network and this network together and kind of be boosting the whole thing. So it's going to
Oh,
be
that's wonderful.
very cool experience. Yeah. One of the things that may come out of that is we may end up shifting from Zoom over to the platform that she uses, just because she can apparently live stream to like 8 different locations at once. And
Oh, wow.
okay, that'd be
All
pretty cool.
right.
Yeah. So just wanted to give people a
Mixing
heads
things
up that
up,
that's
fun.
coming. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're growing ever upward and outward and, contributing to the expansion of the universe, even if it's our
That's
own
right.
little piece of it. Yeah. It's a good thing. So just want to share those 2 things. Also, there is an update that is in process now on the LOA Today app that is being processed primarily through iPhone and Android, through Apple and through the Google processors. And once it's out there, there is going to be a new addition to the app. I have brought in the book that was published in 2018, written by myself and a number of presenters here on the show and a bunch of other life coaches, called Your Daily Dose of Happy, Real Success Stories of the Law of Attraction, a collection of 55 manifestation stories that we put together and published in a book. And it's now going to be a part of the app. So you want to look for that very, very soon. And by the way, that's one more hint. If you haven't downloaded that app yet, get the LOA Today app. It's going to be a good
Get with the program, people.
In addition to that, there's also a new form on there. So, for those who are a little bit confused about the Ask a Question form, using that to send in a comment or a suggestion or a topic or something like that, there's now a separate contact form for that. So you don't have to get all worked up about the fact that you're putting it on an Ask a Question form and you don't have a question. So yeah, we're trying to make the app as easy as possible to use. So make sure that you download it, take advantage of the fact that we got 3 ebooks on there. We have an audio course and we have a video course in addition to all the different episodes, the 25 most recent episodes of the show and information about all the co-hosts. I mean, it's a pretty darn cool app.
Yes,
It
that
really
is awesome.
Yeah. So take advantage. Make sure you guys listen and download and send your stuff in. We really love it when people send stuff in. Speaking of which, last time you were on, Amy, Louis couldn't be here that week.
Yes.
We were talking about the COVID situation, about herd immunity, and Sarah sent in a note via YouTube about that one. And
great.
I had to kind of do a throwback memory thing to try to remember what the context was. But I'm hoping maybe you'll get like a little tickle out of it that'll remind you in more detail about what she's referencing. But she says, your question about herd immunity and the monkey story reminded me of morphic resonance. She says, could this be a force that is at play there? Do you remember that part of the conversation that we had?
Yeah,
no. That's basically where I was at. Right. I hadn't gone back and played it.
Now.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is I think the monkey story may be a reference to the experiment that's been repeated on a number of occasions where, and I don't remember what kind of monkey it is. There's a species of monkey that they have located on different parts of the planet, and they interact with it in one location, and the monkeys at the other location act as if they've had that same interaction. They're able to detect that kind of a thing. And so maybe that's what Sarah was referring to. Morphic resonance is something I have. Louis, do you know anything about morphic resonance?
I was just getting ready to say that's not a term I've heard.
None of us seem to know morphic resonance.
I'm going to do a little research on that, though, Sarah.
Yes, it does.
The change resonance.
Yeah. Changing resonance or change resonance. Yeah. I'm not sure what that is, but interesting question, Sarah. You at least gave us something to think about. We'll have to do some
I'm going to actually look that up and we can maybe discuss it next Monday.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. So there's another reason to get the app, because even if we don't know the answer, we'll look it up.
That's right.
We'll find out.
That's what Google was made for.
That's right. Yes.
No need to use your memory storage anymore.
Well,
I don't even remember, I didn't even have the internet until I was, in my early college years. My kid can't even fathom that. I can't even remember when I didn't have a cell phone. I'm like, when you were first born, all of my friends have all these videos and photos of their kids. I'm like, we didn't have any of this when I first had my baby.
I still remember the encyclopedia salesman coming around.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, me too. When I had to go to the library to do research.
Up in the mountains in South Africa.
I think I'm just waiting until they figure out how to connect my computer to a speck of malachite, because then I'll have access to the records of the world.
That'd be fabulous.
But, I'm kind of holding out on that one.
Once we can tap into malachite, whoa, the information we'll know is incredible. We'll be able to understand gravity, how to increase, decrease. We'll be able to do things which we can't even dream of.
That sounds
It's
like a
something
computer
that
project
I
to
know we
me.
just got really quiet right there. It's all of our imaginations. My mind went to just in the last 20 years, the acceleration in our technology. That was really funny. It's total silence there as our imaginations just went, where are we going to literally be another 20 years from now? My imagination, and I am a sci-fi writer.
Consider the possibilities. Ooh,
Yes.
I like it.
Well, from a spiritual and a technological point of view, it's quite interesting because we have increased our technology to the degree to which we have more stuff than any king in the past ever dreamt of. Mm-hmm. And, we can buy a whole year's groceries online and have it delivered to our door.
Right.
In a matter of days. We have so much, but it hasn't made us happier.
No.
Isn't that interesting? Turns out happiness is not driven by outside experiences. Isn't that fascinating? Or as Paul McCartney said, can't buy me love.
Can't buy me love.
Oh, goodness. Awesome. That is an awesome exclamation point to put on this entire podcast.
This has been a fun conversation, though.
Yes.
I want to get back to what Louis had mentioned really early in the podcast, because first of all, I brought in the whole question about what philosophy meant, but I also wanted to tie it into philosophy versus mechanics. I thought that word mechanics was an interesting choice of words because we typically associate mechanics as like, machine, automation, that kind of thing. And I was wondering, were you actually talking about the word mechanic, choosing the word mechanics in kind of let's use it in a subconscious way, like flip the switch and we're done?
Let's get away from the words like philosophy, process, etc., etc. Let's get away from those words and let's use a word that is based around the idea that this is the basic stuff. It's common sense. Let's just go out and do it. Yeah.
So it's like a simplification.
All embroiled in philosophy or religion or concepts and ideas. Let's just know that if you want to drive a car, you need to know a few things, and let's do it.
Yes.
And that was a very specific reason why I brought it in, is to bring across that idea that it's, if you want to drive a car, you better know a few things about it.
So it's the difference between the tire kicker and the person who actually takes the test drive.
And it's not based on, believe me, just
right.
Get in the car and turn the steering wheel and see if it turns the wheels,
Right.
Try it for yourself. And if it doesn't work for you, then that's fine. Then it doesn't work for you.
That's a good time to see a mechanic, actually.
Yes. Yeah. No,
I thought it was an interesting choice of words because mechanics, you could also turn it into automation. That's what made me think of that. But
yeah.
It's a challenging thing to just simply apply the stuff and not worry about it. We're good at worrying. We humans are kind of built to worry, which is ironic because it's probably the most useless emotion that was ever created, but we're good at it. I don't quite understand why that is, but we're really good at something that does absolutely nothing for us.
Abraham Hicks brought up the emotional guidance scale, and you can live an exciting and exhilarating life going from hope to expectation.
Yes.
And those are positive emotions. There's no stress involved with that. Mm-hmm. They're all positive. They're way out of that whole stress thing. You can live a life outside stress. And, when you've got words like stress management, it's just so faulty.
It is.
It is as faulty as you can get it. Let's do stress management. We've got to manage stress. It's like, don't think of that pink elephant. Come on, guys.
Right.
Yeah, no.
Especially when you hear what people suggest as how you actually manage the stress.
Yes, that's another story. We don't want to go there.
Yeah, we're not even going to go there.
Well, fortunately, we only have about 5 minutes left.
It's stressing me out.
Do you feel that vibe, Amy?
I do.
That horrible vibe.
Nobody likes that vibe.
Oh, I don't know about that. I get the impression that a lot of people like it. They spend a lot of time on it.
This is true.
Not necessarily liking it. It's just active. I don't know if they necessarily like it.
Well,
I don't think they
keep
feel
picking it.
enjoyment when they're thinking about it. I don't
They
know.
keep selecting it. That to me
They keep
indicates
selecting it because it's
some
active,
level
yes,
of like.
but I don't know if they like it.
I think while I do agree with you, I think some people become addicted to the lower energy emotions because they haven't really tried to reach for the more positive ones and to keep themselves sustained in that place. And people feed off of energy. And so whether it's getting angry at people or judging them or judging themselves, anxiety, it's almost like it's an addiction to it. You know,
well, what I was pointing to is the fact that there's actually a payoff.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. There is a payoff.
There's always, no matter how low the vibration is, there's always a payoff for staying in that vibration.
Or you would not do it. We don't do things that we don't get a benefit from, even if it's a negative one.
So, I mean, we can debate the word like all you want to, but on some level they like it. They're like, yeah, okay, give me more of that. I like that. Let's go for that some more. I love that payoff. Keep that payoff coming. Of course, I don't really know a whole lot about the really good payoffs, but this is a good payoff, so keep it coming. I like it. Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a fun thing dealing with. I think I brought this up because my sister called me up today. She was looking for a little computer help, which is usually the reason she calls, and it becomes a full conversation after that. And she was telling me of the different ways that she's been dealing with some of the chaos going on in her life. And some of it was along this line, you know, she likes this part of it. And she was defending it fiercely.
Yes.
And I said, okay, yeah.
I'll let you have it.
It's yours. Have fun. I think it's important to remember, and I try to do this, particularly when I'm dealing with people who are close to me, family, friends, that sort of thing. It's important to remember wherever they're at is where they're at.
Yeah.
And
not trying to control or push this on them. I agree 110%. First of all, to manage my own energy. Which
is enough, by the way.
Right. Exactly. But when I first started learning some of this stuff, I was so excited that I was trying to quote unquote help my friends, my family members. But I learned very quickly that isn't my place. You know, I can talk about it or expose certain people to it, but you either get one of two responses. There are those that, yes, it resonates and they want to know more. And then you can definitely have great conversations. I have actually a lot of friends that this has happened with. And then there are those that they just, no, that isn't right. That's, you know, airy fairy thinking. That isn't how it works. And it's really not worth your energy and trying to convince them any otherwise. I mean, it's just, there's no point to it.
I don't try to convince them, but if they do say to me that's not how it works, I jump all over that. Oh, how does it work?
Oh, really?
I really want to know how it works. And then they have to start thinking, and that's when everything starts.
Anytime anyone says that to me, because it does trigger people when they hear law of attraction and they want to get into why there's no way that could possibly be the way things work. I always say, listen, I've been experimenting with this for 20 years. And I have proven to myself that it works. So I don't need to convince you. If you were to take these principles on and to actually apply them and see them working in your own life, I can say for me, 100% is the way it works. I don't need to prove that to anybody. I've proven it to myself, which at the end of the day is all that matters.
Actually, it could be something much more simple than that. I mean, when you think about it, and this goes back to Louie's story, it could be they were just looking for a place to take a shit.
Yeah. I like how you brought those stories around to each other. Genius.
So with that lovely, smelly thought in mind, thank you guys very much for another enjoyable conversation. Very much appreciate it. And maybe we'll have Monique to talk with next week about astral projection if she's able to make the time. But either way, we'll look forward to talking to you guys. Thank you also to our podcast listeners as well, without whom we would not have a podcast. And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.